Let's talk to Linda in Tunbridge Wells. Linda, hello, thank you for calling.
Oh, hi, Nick. Yes, I just wanted to say to you that these marches for peace, they are not for peace, they are hate marches. I spotted today, watching various news items, there were men dressed up in Hamas terrorist attire.
You saw that today on the marches, did you?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean...
and I also saw a Nazi emblem.
What is that? Can you just clarify to me, what is that attire?
It is what the terrorists, Islamic, genocidal, anti-Semitic terrorists wear just before they're going to commit jihad.
Can you give me an example of what sort of thing it is? Many of us would not recognise it, I suspect.
Well, I saw it on 2 different TV stations. I mean, it was as clear as anything.
What is it, a scarf or is it a...
headband with Arabic writing, which I don't know what it says. They've also got the red keffiyeh, which is this scarf that they also wear. This was complete attire. And there are anti-Semitic images, and I am being gaslighted all day long by the media, telling me, no, it's peaceful, they want peace. How dare you tell a Jewish person who's watching anti-Semitism on the streets of London for the 5th Saturday in a row that I'm crazy?
I'm going to ask Benedict here.
With this country,
Linda,
and you know it.
Linda, stay with us. Stay with us, Linda.
They are not calling to disarm Hamas. They want Israel to surrender to barbarism.
I never saw a poster there that asked them to give up the hostages. You're absolutely right. I take your point, and I understand entirely why you're living in fear, and I've heard very eloquently from many callers. But Linda, stay on the line for a second. Briefly, Benedict. I mean... It's true, isn't it? Our police officers are not going to be trained what to look out for,
Again, this is part of the problem with multiculturalism as we interpret it in this country, which is not, in fact, that everybody becomes sort of deeply ingrained and knowledgeable about other cultures. It is that we close our eyes and just say, that's somebody else's culture and you have to just accept it, but I'm not actually going to bother to learn about it. And I think this is something that's also reflected in, for example, the relations between the police and the Pakistani community when it comes to things like child abuse, when it comes to things like forced marriages, when it comes to things like honour killings. A lot of these things are able to go under the radar because the police have no concept of what the Pashtunwali is. They have no idea why it is that people don't go to the police, that, you know, culturally you do not go to the police with your problems, you settle them in-house, and why this sort of thing is allowed to happen. And you see that through lots of different cultural groups, communities as they're called. The police likes to talk about cohesion, talking to community leaders. It doesn't police necessarily in the same way because it doesn't entirely understand the phenomenon that it's dealing with. And to be fair, that's a very difficult thing to ask rank and file officers, let alone leadership, to, you know, get yourself completely across all these things.
It's true. Linda, let me ask you this, if I may. Is there any other point in your life you have felt more fear as a Jewish person in this country?
Never. I'm 72 years old. I was brought up in London, born and bred in London. I was beaten up at school, in my junior school, for being Jewish. I just thought, well, you know, this happened to me once, but I have never felt like this. My family are scared to go out at the moment in London. I don't live in London. I live outside of London.
I know, you're in Tunbridge Wells, yes?
Yes, I live in a village.
Have you considered, and I don't say this with any pleasure at all, have you considered leaving this country?
Yes, now my husband and we are talking seriously. We're being pushed out.
Where would you go, do you think?
The country we love, but we would rather leave of our own accord. There will be a time when we will be so threatened that we won't be able to walk anywhere. So it's a choice of that, and I don't think I can wait because I have great-great-grandparents who were killed in pogroms, and they waited too long.
Hello, David.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
Very well indeed. All yours. Shoot. Didn't mean to, I shouldn't say that, really. No, crack on. Crack on, David.
Okay. What do you want me to come in from the strategic position or some context to the sort of previous activity where the cenotaph was a focal point? Where this?
Look, I think just land your point if you can. I want to get through as many callers as possible, David, but I don't want to cut you off or censor you. So just land the point in the best way you think.
Okay, so I was heavily involved with the previous attempt for the flashpoint to be for it to go to Connecticut, the cenotaph, when BLM burnt the flag.
Right.
And what we saw then was a very provocative act in order to draw the veterans out. So the optics at that point, and this is the context for now, was that you'd got BLM up the other end at Trafalgar Square. You'd got a group of veterans that ended up going to the cenotaph to protect the
Just
cenotaph.
to be clear, do you want to say when this was, roughly?
So this was during when BLM were at their height.
Okay, all right, fine.
But the recipe, the thing is, Nick, is the recipe is the same, apart from now what we're seeing is greater mass and greater effort being put into it. But nonetheless, the veterans were a critical factor. So you've got the veterans in the middle around the cenotaph. Now, I was working with a number of very senior generals at the time trying to put a stop to this, because nobody wanted this optically to go the way it looked like it was going. It was going to be bad news for everyone. But what you'd got at the other end were the EDL, the DFLA, which are the Democratic Football people, and Tommy Robinson. Now, so what you've got there is the same recipe, as, in essence, as what we're seeing now. Now, this was well known at the time, and it was disseminated, apart from the fact a lot of people have sat on their hands, but it was exacerbated by the then permanent secretary at the MOD, who subsequently became the National Security Advisor, Sir Stephen Lovegrove, endorsing in MOD emails BLM. Now, what we're looking at was more or less an open goal, right? Well, okay, come and have a go. You know, the policy wasn't there. But what we're seeing now is a dreadful lack of experience within what constitutes the government at the officer end, where they're not really steering this the way it should go, where we shouldn't be having our National Armistice Day weekend parade interfered with anything like this.
But David, just to pick up on a point here, there's a difference, isn't there? First of all, we don't really want politicians directing operational stuff on the ground, do we? So really, they should just stay out of that unless they're going to change the law. Surely.
That's correct. So they're at the other end of the job. So my critique here, really, Nick, is laying with the load officers on this, which would be Matthew Rycroft at the Home Office and Sir Tim Barrow, who's chairing National Security National Security Council. And I'm going to submit that actually there needs to be some table thumping in number 10 and go, right, this recipe and what we've got here was known years ago. It's been allowed to run. Clearly now it's been seen as an open goal. Obviously, the government, I understand, are trying to conduct.
David, can I ask you, do you think this ends up then with a form of legislation to protect one day against demonstrations?
I hope it doesn't have to come to that, but of course we've got very blunt tooling. The government are attempting to operate on a subkinetic threshold of war, but of course, how long that's going to go on for, I don't know. But what I do know is what we've got is a dreadful lack of expertise and experience within those load officers. What we've got is managers. We don't have at that end of it really the kind of depth that we...
You were formerly a Director of Strategic Defence Initiatives, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Listen, David, we could interview you as a separate guest, quite frankly, to draw out on this. I'm going to avoid getting into too many weeds because I think your overlying point is spot on. But if you'll forgive me now, I'm going to move on to take some other calls. But we're going to keep your name on record because I think we should come back to David and make some time to talk to him more. Benedict, I'll just take another call if I may. I'm going to go to Pauline in Southport. Pauline, hello. And what would you like to say?
Oh, hello. I was looking at the cenotaph this morning, as I always do. Every morning I watch the remembrance service.
Yep.
And quite frankly, I thought that the one that they put on this morning was an absolute shambles. It was a disgrace and an insult to our fallen. Where was the king? Where was the royal family? Where were the politicians?
Pauline,
where was the MP?
Pauline, you're absolutely right to raise those questions. I'm only going to interrupt because that all happens tomorrow. It actually happens on Remembrance Sunday, that service.
Oh, right.
So today, in fact, they were protecting, that's why it was being effectively sealed off and the marchers had agreed not to go there, to protect it, particularly if people were stupid enough to do what they did in Rotherham, which was throw paint over the cenotaph. but that will all happen tomorrow. Today is actually Armistice Day, but it's celebrated on the Sunday, and I promise you that will happen tomorrow, I assure you, Pauline. So thank you for raising it. I know it's confusing for a lot of people.
I hope so.
It will be there, and if it's not, I'm on air from 1 to 4 tomorrow, and you and I will be having a much longer conversation.
We will do. We will be having a lot deeper conversation.
We will indeed. Pauline, thank you very much indeed. Time, because there's so many interesting calls. Let's go to Sarah in London. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Nick. Thank you for taking my call.
Not at all. The airways and screens are yours.
Well, first of all, I find it incredibly refreshing that Suella Braverman has spoken out for the silent majority. I feel this very strongly. I'm not young, but I feel more and more recently that the tail's been not only wagging the dog, but encouraged to wag the dog. I agree with your previous caller about that there's never any sign in the walks about the hostages. But one thing I would raise that hasn't been raised, and it's a matter of respect, Saturday is the Jewish Sabbath, and the marchers have chosen to march on a Saturday. Why haven't they chosen to march on a Friday, the Islamic Sabbath? Wouldn't that be something worth considering?
Well,
I think it's disrespectful enough that they're not respecting the armistice, which I feel very strongly about.
Well, that's tolerance goes both ways. I mean, there are some. I've spoken to some Muslim people, and I've pointed out that this is sacred to us, and the threat of desecration, or actually just desecrating the day. If you imagine, and I think I've got this right, Benedict will correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, the Islamic faith, if you desecrate images under the Islamic faith, this is regarded as a hugely serious and deeply offensive. And I just think tolerance works both ways, and it's clearly hasn't by just having this march, peaceful or not.
I absolutely agree with you, but I really am against the marches. I think I agree with what's been said on your programme and previous programmes, that a lot of the people on the march don't even understand what they're marching for.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think, that goes with the people who did what they did at the cenotaph this morning. They're just idiots and just following in the wake of what's happening.
Yes, the so-called counter-protesters. Sarah, thank you for your call. To Stuart from Essex. Stuart, I understand you're very welcome. You were at the cenotaph today.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon. Yeah, I was there earlier. So, I'd just like to make a point.
Yeah, do tell us what happened, what you saw.
Well, there was probably a couple of hundred people that wanted to go and pay their respects for the 2-minute silence. The police, who, to be fair, handled it well, really tried to block them. A few at the front sort of pushed their way through. There was no violence. I didn't see anyone throwing punches or getting hurt. And then, you know, obviously people on your programme and Sky News say how everyone's far right and they were there for a fight. It was far from that, and it was a minor scuffle, really. The police let everyone through and everyone behaved themselves. So
were you there? I think this was about 11:15. It was reported,
yeah, that's correct.
and actually on the social media it looked like quite a surge against the police. Just, you're saying it wasn't a surge at all?
Well, yeah, there was a surge. There was only a few officers trying to stop the... I wasn't right at the front. Okay. I was midway there. I certainly weren't there for any fight or any trouble. Like I say, I'm a normal working guy, never been in trouble. I'm an ex-police officer, to be honest, so I certainly weren't going down there to fight the police. A few of them tried to stop them getting there. They wanted to go there to pay their respects. There was a minor scuffle, and then basically the police retracted and let everyone through. There was a few chants towards the police officers, but you know. Why would
they chant at the police? I don't understand that.
Well, I think it's aimed. There was a lot of non-metropolitan police there from out the area who I saw, and I think it was aimed towards the Met on. We've all seen this 2-tier policing. They were singing about you've let your country down, and that, you know.
Okay. They do sound pretty. I'm sorry, that sounds pretty ignorant to me, because the policemen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. There's no need for that. These guys are doing their job. Probably half of them probably feel the same sort of way about, you know, being ordered to, like I say, a sort of 2-tier policing, which we can all see. But it certainly wasn't the scenes that the media have portrayed across the news. And,
we'll keep an eye out for that. Benedict, did you want to ask?
I just
something?
think, I mean, this is why it's sort of quite dispiriting, because I understand the points that have just been made, people wanting to sort of do the right thing. The problem is it doesn't matter whether or not there was trouble at the cenotaph on the scale that is being reported by some or not on that scale. The point is the narrative has now been set. The argument will be from many members of the political class, of the media, these people turned up and trouble happened. And it doesn't matter how much trouble happened. And
so the story is the far right.
And again, you know, the fact that most of these people I do not think necessarily are
but that's what they're labelled.
But a few people, one or two of them, very prominent people, are known to be, and they turned up and they also scarpered before anything bad could happen to them. But that is the narrative, and it takes away then from what is actually the disgraceful thing, which is weeks and weeks of unchallenged marching and chanting xenophobic anti-Semitism. And that, I'm afraid, is the problem. I understand the desire to want to be seen and, you know, want to do the right thing and protect, but the sensible thing would have been to stay away and not give the media and certain politicians their opportunity to paint this as not about these original marches.
Let me just ask you, Stuart, because your call's prompted, I can't keep up with the social media and so forth, people showing me peaceful videos of people standing there. At 11 o'clock, was it silent?
It was very silent, apart from an annoying helicopter, which I don't know was press or police above, which sort of spoiled it somewhat. But we also walked down to the march and had a friendly debate with a couple of Muslim guys who were offended at some old boy who was wearing an Israeli flag.
Right.
But again, you know, you try talking to people at these marches, and you get the idea that half of them haven't got a clue why they're there. But you know, I certainly didn't see any violence. Everyone dispersed after. I didn't see any crowds that were at the cenotaph saying, "Oh, let's get down and fight." You know, the Palestinian protesters. You know, everyone sort of dispersed, and I say, it certainly wasn't a full-scale riot like the media have made out.
Stuart, thank you. We're going to bear that in mind. I think there's a clip available, actually, of what's just happened. So thanks for calling. We'll get to the screen, Stuart, because we're about to play a clip that's been released by the Met Police, along with a statement which the Assistant Commissioner, Matt Twiss, has said it's been closely monitored by the police. We also have police looking out for any troublemakers that might be intent on causing disruption. I think that sounds like only half of the statement there, so I'll try and get some clarification on that. But let's play this clip that's come in from the Met Police.
At the moment, we're dealing with two things. We're dealing with a counter-protest, and we're dealing with the main Palestinian march. The counter-protest arrived early this morning, just after 9 o'clock, and groups of several hundred arrived and seemed intent on confrontation and intent on violence. We've seen a number of arrests made. We've had arrests for possession of a knife, possession of a baton, possession of Class A drugs, and assault on an emergency worker. There are a number of groups within this counter-protest who have split off and seem intent on seeking confrontation with the main Palestinian march. And the policing operation at the moment is being effective in preventing that happening. The main Palestinian march formed up as intended at 12 o'clock and has moved off at 12:45. It's moving along the prescribed route, and there are tens of thousands of people. This is the biggest march that we've seen in this phase, and it's, at the moment, there are no issues with it. It's being closely monitored by police, and we also have police looking out for any troublemakers that might be intent on causing disruption or seeking a confrontation with people on that main march.
It's Simon in Cardiff. Simon, hello.
Well, I'm on my way back to Cardiff. I went to the cenotaph this morning.
Oh, you were? OK.
And I'm Jewish. I went with a black friend of mine. I went with a Sikh friend of mine. And there was a couple of Muslims with us as well.
Right.
I'm just interested to know how we're far right, because it seems that we went as football supporters to pay our respects, but we automatically get tarred with this badge. We're far right hooligans. We were all in our 60s. Some of the people I was with had served.
Well, you could be a far right person in the 60s. I'm not saying you are, by the way.
In my 60s, yeah. No, but I'm 61 years old, but I'm saying I'm Jewish. I was a black guy.
Right, right.
A Sikh. We are not far right.
But were you one of those who were kicking off? I'm assuming you weren't.
No.
And that's what they've done. By kicking off, you're all far right now. That's it. The damage is done.
Well, the damage is done. But what I saw, I was coming along the embankment, and they kettled various people who wanted to go forward along to the cenotaph. So they had to turn down towards the embankment and come across, and then go up a small alleyway by the skylit side of Scotland Yard towards the cenotaph. And then all of a sudden, it seemed police had their batons out and wallop. I mean, I was probably 50 yards away from it. When I eventually got to the cenotaph, everything was peaceful. The only noise during the 2-minute silence was, as your previous caller said, that annoying helicopter that decided to fly backwards and forwards. And I didn't actually see any trouble. I saw the surge.
There was definitely something there. I used the word surge, and I don't want to downplay what happened, because I'll be very interested to see, you know, if anyone was hurt, if anyone was injured. But it's certainly what was seen there looked worse than what 2 eyewitnesses, including yourself, have said. So I'm very happy to have the jury out on that. But the real problem is, Simon, the narrative is set. Listen, Simon, thank you. Safe travels back to Cardiff. Tend to pile in at every opportunity. Not sure they've got that quite right, myself. But you share with me what you think. Let's go to Kathleen in Antrim. Hello, Kathleen.
Hello.
Welcome, and thank you for calling.
Right, you're all right.
What would you like to say?
I believe she's completely right, because
Suella, that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm one of the silent majority. I've never phoned into a TV programme before in my life.
Well, thank you.
I've feel strongly, because my grandparents, most of my family were in the First World War and Second, and I myself served in the forces, and never, as the silent majority, ever heard, unless you take up arms, and I think it's totally, totally wrong. I believe the silent majority has to be heard. The only way that we have to do is now speak. I think she's totally right. The silent majority in this country at the minute are not getting heard.
Do you think, and this is just a point I'm toying with, Kathleen, do you think actually if a politician says something that you feel no other politician is addressing but speaks to you, a silent majority, if you like, that helps you? It kind of eases, if you like, the frustration you might be feeling. Do you take a sigh of relief and say, at last, someone's listening?
Well, I think everybody's listening, but nobody's being brave enough to say it. I do believe that our Prime Minister is him and ham. He won't back her and he won't fire her. And he has got no backbone. I think somebody has to speak up for the silent majority. Nobody is doing it.
And what would you do if he fired her?
I believe there is politicians there, but they're not speaking.
But how would you feel? And I don't mean in terms of votes. I think that's a fairly predictable conversation. How would you feel though if the Prime Minister says, I'm sorry, you don't speak for us and you're fired? To Suella.
Who's he saying you don't speak for us?
Well,
is he speaking for
him? He would say that. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. He's not saying what he wants her to say.
I mean,
you say speaking for the public.
Do you feel? Just one final question, really.
Okay.
Do you feel that actually, despite what Suella has said, that she thinks the British police are biased, do you have any confidence that things will change after this weekend?
No. No, I've been in London on shopping times, and 20 years ago I heard the Palestinian march then, and they were speaking about something against the Jewish religion in Israel. I'll not forget that. My daughter couldn't get me away quick enough because I was inclined to say, not on. But nobody seems to listen. And I do believe there is a silent majority out there who believes that we have a great country, that we have a really good country, but the Palestinian protesters are taking it over. The silent majority don't have a say. We don't march.
So I'm just going to go, however, to John in Manchester. John, hello, thanks for calling.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Far away.
Mine's a simple call. I believe we could protest on all that.
Yeah.
But there's, I don't know, is it 200,000 people in London today?
I honestly don't know what the figure is. The police didn't even put a number on it when they gave a statement, but it's in tens of thousands for sure.
Right. So, where they going to go and relieve themselves?
I have no idea. Hopefully not in the streets. And I think, actually, what I will say is I think if they stick to the organised routes, whatever march it is, that is taken into account. So, but I can't tell you any more than that.
But that's an offence in itself.
Well, if they just go on the streets, it is. You're right. Yeah.
And I think it's outrageous. I'm sure tomorrow morning, Monday morning, that a lot of the shops will be cleaning up everywhere.
Quite possibly. There will be things like that from any march, to be fair, that happens. But, yeah, you raised the point. John, in Manchester, you raised the point I hadn't thought of. Thank you very much for doing that.